Hey there, friends. Welcome back to the Cube Talk podcast, where we interview people who are living out the things that we value here at Cube Living. Today, I had the privilege of interviewing Matthias Shapiro. Matthias is a software developer, data analyst, and writer. He's worked in tech since the beginning of the mobile revolution and has worked on hundreds of applications, devices, and digital media from web to desktop to mobile to virtual and augmented reality. He has also written about culture and morality through the lens of emerging technology, data ubiquity, and the emergence of social media. He currently writes a newsletter on culture, data, and institutional decline at Marginally Compelling, a Substack newsletter. Without further ado, let's jump on in.
I'm Matthias Shapiro. I am, in my normal life, I am a software developer. I work with a number of companies like Microsoft and Twitter and Disney, and but I also do a lot of writing. I have a Twitter you can mostly ignore, but I also have a Substack where I write about data and politics. I got really big during the COVID thing because I was doing a lot of data work and helping people understand what is this virus, where did it come from, why is it a big deal, and one of the things that really made a big difference. Well, I think made a big difference for me was like just presenting people with raw data, because all the headlines are like, oh, it's up this much, or it's declining, or it's increasing, and there's no context around any of it for people. Mm-hmm. And then like helping people keep on top of like, what are the scientific advancements, and what does this study say or that study say? A lot of that stuff can be like super opaque,
right?
And the news does a very bad job of telling people about it. But kind of alongside that, and this was like as COVID went on in 2020, 2021, I got really interested in and concerned about things like institutions and how they function, and when they get captured, and when they're corrupted, and also how people end up sort of taking in information in ideological contexts, in terms of like how do my friends see this, and is XYZ view something that's going to fit inside of my social dynamic?
Right.
And that's something I think has become a really big deal in the last 5-6 years, something like that. As we've had some political upheavals, and we've had some social upheavals, right. And it's harder to get people sort of to cross those ideological lines and even talk to each other.
Yeah.
So
what do you think some things that have played into that, making that so much harder recently?
I blame the internet. There was somebody who was writing about internet communities at one point, and said that she had this concept of an anti-community, whereas a real community is a place where you come and you find like friendship and camaraderie, but you also have responsibilities, right? If you violate the norms of that society, you either have to like make up for it and like make amends and like rebuild fences and and fix the wrongs,
right.
Or you get pushed out of it, right? And she said the internet community is like, it's like an anti-society, because you can just disappear, and people might not notice you're gone, right? You're responsible. Yeah. You can instantly appear in another community and find that camaraderie, and
interesting.
Right. And so the fact that it doesn't have any of that stability that you would have with in-person communities is a problem.
Right, yeah.
And I think the ability to sort of like show up and disappear from communities is, generally speaking, a problem. And it's funny because it can be. It's funny because it can be nice if
yeah.
There are contexts where you do want to be able to start over, right? But I think with digital social interactions, starting over takes 5 seconds, and but it's impossible to hold anybody to the consequences of their actions and that sort of thing.
Right. What's interesting too is so I work with people in their late teens, early 20s, and there's especially those that have spent a lot of time on social media and the internet and stuff. It's almost like some of that is in like a subconscious expectation for normal communities too. Like it kind of bleeds into that. Like one of the things we talk a lot about here at Cube Living is conflict resolution, because there's just kind of this automatic tendency to say, I have a problem, so I'm just going to stop interacting.
Yes. Right.
And I think that's directly a result of social media and that kind of stuff. Right.
Well, I mean, you can definitely sort of just put somebody on mute or not answer a text or that sort of thing. Just the whole ghosting idea,
right,
is easier than trying to address a problem. But then again, raising a problem is so much easier.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Like if you're looking for attention through conflict, the internet is the place for you.
Exactly. Come on. Yes. And with attention being incentivized, right?
Right.
Then what draws more attention? Everybody did what they were supposed to, or this guy got wrecked?
Right. Sure. It's an interesting problem, but it's. I think the more interesting thing is what are we going to do about it, right? Because it's not a problem that goes away, right? No, I'm not going to start using the internet or stop using the internet anytime soon. So it's here to stay. How are we going to adjust to it? And I think there's a lot of there's just so many questions around that, and it's something of a fight, and it's tough because on a certain level it's a fight every individual has to do themselves, right? You can join people and saying I'm going to do it this way, but ultimately you kind of have to do it that way. Yeah. So,
man.
Yeah.
So you're in the tech world.
Yes.
That's kind of your wheelhouse where you spend a lot of time. What are well, actually, first, just tell me what you're doing with what's the company you're working for? What do they do? What's your job?
I'm working for it's a small startup. It's called Streaming Global, and we basically just serve streams out for big organizations or larger organizations, and we've got a really pretty cool tech that reduces the latency of the stream to a really short level, which makes a lot of new streaming possibilities viable. Things like streaming high quality video to a VR headset, something like that.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I've been with the company for about 2 months, so I'm not a spokesman for my company. Although if you guys are watching, hi. But it's been a fun experience because before that I was with Disney, and Disney is an extremely large organization that moves very slowly. And this is not. This is an extremely small organization that moves extraordinarily quickly. Yeah. And for me, it's more fun. It's more exciting. It's certainly higher risk than Disney. But there's a lot more sort of innovation going on when people are sort of running around trying stuff.
Right.
I enjoy that part of it. So.
Yeah. That's cool. So what specifically do you do there? What do you do?
Yeah, I do sort of anything that you would interact with in terms of user interfaces.
Okay.
So I build tools for our team to set up a new stream, or maintain a stream, or monitor a stream, and then I'm going to end up doing some stuff for anything that our client is going to want to see. Oh, what do I have set up? How is it? How healthy is it? And that sort of stuff. Right. So yeah.
And then in general, is the plan for you to then license that technology out to these various places, or?
I'm not sure how much I should talk about.
That's fine. Yeah.
Something like that. I mean, we do a lot of the service ourselves.
Okay.
And but then I think we're gonna have a part of the company that does license stuff out. And
yeah.
Yeah.
What was it like working at Disney?
It was very interesting. I really enjoyed the work that I was doing, and it was I had a great team, and I built the Xbox application for Disney Plus, and before that for ESPN, and before that for NHL, and it was a very, very fun team to work on. It was a very, very fun technology to work on.
Yeah.
And it was towards the end of it, it was a little bit of a difficult company because there was so much like culture war stuff.
Oh,
and
yeah,
it's kind of like it was very, very frustrating because I suspect this is true for a lot of people in tech, is that on like the high level, on like CEO level and PR level, there's all these fights happening over various culture war topics. And then down on the actually building stuff level, people are like, I just want to work.
Yeah.
Just leave me alone. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to go to another training. I have to get this code in. We have to solve that bug. And that was a really pretty pervasive attitude in most of the teams that I interacted with, was like, I don't want to talk about it. I just want to do my work. I feel like there's a lot of people who feel that way about a lot of topics. And I think there's a lot of resentment around because there's some people who take the leave me alone, I don't want to talk about it, as okay, well, while you're not talking about it, I'm going to go like 5 times further than you're comfortable with on this thing. And you're like, and people are like, no, I don't want you to do that either. I just stop. Everybody's just like, stop everything you're doing.
Right.
And go back to normal, whatever that means. And that's such a frustrating thing.
Yeah, I imagine it is.
Yeah, because it's a sort of thing like, I was gonna say, it feels like you have to pick your battles, but people don't want to pick their battles.
Yeah,
they don't want there to be any battles. So,
hey, you're hired to do the work, and then your work's getting bogged down by all these things that don't even theoretically affect your job at all.
Right.
Right.
No, in the workaday, it can be easy. It's easier to deal with my team working on the stuff. It gets a little embarrassing when people are like, oh, you work for Disney? Let's talk about this thing. And I'm like, I don't want to. or I have no insight or that sort of thing. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, there's that's another good thing about working for a smaller company is I don't think that anybody at my company cares what I think about anything. As long as I get the time to care. Right. As long as I get the stuff done, they're just like, nobody cares. So, which is just handy.
That's great.
Yeah.
So well, I want to get into some of your writing in a second because it's very intriguing to me. But staying on the topic of tech stuff, like, I mean, we were just talking before the interview started about, like, to remain on the cutting edge of things is stressful and intense because it's just developing so fast in a lot of these areas. Like, what are some tech trends that you see coming up that you think are going to maybe even have an impact on culture and that kind of stuff? So
one of the things that I'm very curious to see is VR has been around for a little while. But the devices are so expensive that not a lot of people have experienced it. It is a pretty intense experience, especially if you can do it in something that's like a social context.
Okay.
And I think the reason Mark Zuckerberg sunk so much money, successfully or not, I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see.
Right, is because I think he had one of those experiences. There's a guy that I've talked to who he lives a couple 100 miles away from his kids, and gets to see them every month or 2 or something like that. But he will go in and play golf with his son in VR.
Yeah.
And there's something like it's weird to tell people about because a lot of people roll their eyes at it, and I'm kind of like sort of, but it creates a sense of presence that's like far and away better than any other. It's better than telephone. It's better than Zoom. It's better.
Right,
It's
yeah.
better than anything except being there.
Yes.
Right. And if I were to focus on something, I would say being there, like in-person conversations are
Right,
absolutely
right.
the top tier. But
If you can, that's the next best thing.
right,
Yeah.
right, and it is really incredible for those sorts of experiences. And so I mean that's one of the things. I don't know if that's going to take off, but a lot of people are pursuing it because when people have that experience, they're like like a light bulb goes off in their head, and they're like, "Ooh, this is the future now."
Yeah.
I personally, I'm still waffling on this, right? Like, because it is a fantastic, amazing thing.
Yeah.
But also, I'm not sure people want any more technology strapped to their heads.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm not sure where we're going to go with that, but it is something that I'm pretty interested in exploring.
Yeah.
So.
What about like augmented reality stuff, like Google Lens or things like that? Like,
So the augmented reality stuff is. So I actually worked with Microsoft's augmented reality team for a little while, and their stuff is so they have what's called the HoloLens, and it's got a visor, and it
Okay.
can project, so it does a mapping of any room,
Yeah.
right? And it will project stuff so like you could have a virtual ball and you'd throw it and it would bounce off the couch.
oh,
right?
interesting.
Like it
Man,
has,
the amount of sensors that would have to go to that
it's
seems intense.
pretty intense. But it was really cool. You could do some very, very neat things with it. But what I found, practically speaking, is that you had to have a really good example of something that you were going to do with it. And so, for example, like you could do something like if you've got a table, or you could maybe like put furniture in a room. That would be right. Like you could interior decorate your room, move stuff around really easily. That would be a good use case
For sure.
a lot of people kept trying to think, oh, well, people are going to wear this all the time. And the fact of the matter is like people have about if the task is really engaging, they got about a 20 to 30 minute limit on how long they're willing to have something on their face. Right. And so there's a lot of work. There's a lot of stuff you can do. And I think the whole industry, augmented and virtual, is trying to figure out, okay, what do people want to do and what should we be doing with that?
Right.
Because you can do all sorts of crazy stuff.
Yes.
But what's actually going to really drive somebody to be like, all right, I'm going to pick this thing up and put it on my head and do something with it.
Right. Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of possibility, but there's a lot of people. The use case is still evolving.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What about like? So I went down the rabbit hole this week of like blockchain technologies and building on Ethereum and that kind of stuff.
No, I have a bad experience with that. I'm a very free speech sort of guy. I'm very like media should be free, and I have a lot of very strong opinions on like censorship and removing things from either libraries or content providers, or like, well, I hate it when something disappears, when some book or movie or something. And there was a blockchain based organization, I guess it's still kind of around, called Library.
Okay.
And it was for making sure that you can publish something and then nobody can ever take it away from you, right? It'll be on the blockchain and you can go and you can find it, right? And a government agency shut them down in a really horrible way because has been attacking the organization. And the organization is basically like, okay, what do we need to do to comply with your regulations? And the government just like won't answer them.
Oh my gosh.
And it's been a really so I started trying to build some stuff on their thing, and then I see this where they're being attacked by the SEC, and I'm just like, oh, I don't have time for this.
Right. Yeah.
And that's just how my personal thoughts on all sorts of blockchain stuff is like, I don't know if this is just going to get like randomly shut down by governments.
Yeah.
And I would rather not waste my time on things.
Yeah, well, it kind of defeats the whole purpose of the reason they're doing it.
Right,
you know?
right.
Like,
Right. So I don't know. If it's not my thing.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people who do it and a lot of respect for them.
Yeah.
It's not mine.
Right. Yeah. Well, one more question on this.
Sure.
It's kind of the hot topic, I think, for a lot of people is like AI stuff.
Oh yeah.
And what do you see are some of the potentials there?
Oh man.
Like-
It's pretty. That stuff is pretty crazy. Because so one of the I haven't checked in with them since I started my new job, but there's a group of Christian AI technologists who are sort of going full force and trying to figure out where the possibilities, and this is both with like image generation and chat GPT sorts of text generation stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And and right now, at least last time I checked, which was like 2 months ago, OpenAI has their chat GPT, and then everybody's
Right.
trying to catch up to them. I think there are some open source versions that you could like literally, if you have a powerful enough computer, you could download it and build your own and put your own inputs and that sort of thing.
Interesting.
And I think that's the future of that, because I think people are going to feel really stifled by the big company. I think the
Right.
big company, I think the OpenAI is going to have a lot of success licensing their stuff out to businesses.
Okay.
But people are going to be building their own systems, which is, I think, has a lot of potential for people to explore ideas. But it's also got so much potential for fraud and scams, and that stuff worries me a lot.
Yeah, for real.
And part of the reason is I've got elderly. My mom's still alive. My grandparents are still alive, and there has been so many scams targeting the elderly. And
yeah.
Like, it's hard to keep up with it as a young-ish sort of person who is good at keeping up with this sort of thing. And if you're 70, 80 years old, then I can't even imagine. Like, must seem like overnight someone can fake voices of people and
I mean, just a couple months ago, I had some elderly relatives of mine get scammed, and it was terrible. I mean, like I was worried. It's like they're in their 90s. It's like the stress alone of
It's
that,
so awful.
is terrible. And not to mention the monetary loss and that stuff. And I mean, we had to tell them, like, look, it's like nobody thinks you're stupid. Like, people wouldn't do it if it didn't work,
Right.
But I mean, I'm worried about that too, because it's getting more and more convincing.
Right. Yeah. No, it's disappointing. I don't know what to do about it.
Right.
But I'm trying to keep an eye on it. So
a lot of potential for that AI stuff. It's for good and bad.
Yeah.
That's another rabbit hole I've gone down recently in my commute, is listening to stuff on that.
Yeah. I think image generation is really some really interesting stuff, and it's definitely like that. That dichotomy between like a technology as a tool, and you can use it for good and for evil. And I think the evil is enormous, right? And part of it is because AI allows people to sort of indulge certain, like, a curiosity that they wouldn't have previously been able to indulge.
Right.
And people can spiral down that, and it's ugly. It's bad. But I think that it can be. I think you can use it for good. It's just it's going to take a lot of work for people to use it for good. And I honestly think there's going to have to be a lot of coordination between people one of the things that I would love to do is see if you can train an AI to make religious iconography that's actually like beautiful and respectful.
Yeah.
Right, because the iconography does, especially Eastern Orthodox iconography, follows these some certain aesthetic patterns, and very certain things have meaning in terms of colors, in terms of symbols, and you could theoretically train an AI to recognize and understand all that stuff, and then come up with iconography for recent martyrs, or for stories from the Bible that maybe didn't get as much attention, or So I think it'd be very cool to see more of that. Which I'm sure we will.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Well, one of the things that, at least was so interesting to me, like when we met at a homeschool expo a couple weeks ago, a month or two ago, but was just we got talking about culture and about young people and just some of the issues that are plaguing our younger generations and that kind of thing. Like, that's obviously something you're really passionate about, and it's something you spend a lot of time writing about. Like, what would you say are some of the biggest issues that are facing young people today, or even facing our faith communities and that kind of thing?
Right. There's an interesting strain of nihilism that kind of runs through our culture, and I hate it because it is very casual with how it treats the dignity of a human being, and it's funny because there's some really great art that sort of surrounds this idea of like a multiverse, but a lot of it will end up like descending into nihilism because the core concept of the multiverse is like every choice that you make splits the universe into divergent paths, but that means that choices don't matter, right? So that the idea, I think ultimately the idea that choices don't matter is really poisonous to the human psyche. There's a quote from a movie in a movie called Secondhand Lions that I'm totally gonna mangle, but it's something along the lines of like even if like courage doesn't make things better, or hard work doesn't save the day, it's important to believe in those things because not having them will certainly fail. Right? Yeah. Having them might not always guarantee success, but not having them is very bad news. And I think that's a lot of the sort of vibe of our age is that your choices don't matter, right? And success is random, and you can't make things better. And that is just a terrible way to live your life.
Oh my gosh!
Right?
Yeah.
And it's it denies. I think it denies, or a lot of it goes into denying the dignity of people. One of the things that I've seen a lot in the tech world, and it's gotten a lot worse since I started in 2006, 2007. So I guess it's been about 15 years. And there's been this sort of vision inside of management, inside of hiring, that that if this person is a problem for any reason, then you can let them go and hire another one to replace that person. That this idea that the people who work with you are easily replaceable cogs in a machine.
Right. Yeah.
And that's not true.
Right.
Not
I was just having this conversation yesterday with my sister. She works at Amazon. Yeah. And she was like, I don't feel like it would matter if I just never came back. You know, like right. And like I don't like nobody listens to me about like issues that are going on or whatever, because it's just like they don't have to, because there's 10 other people who would be willing to come in and take my place and like
right. And I think any organization that has those jobs, or that it gives people the feeling that the work that they're doing is useless and pointless, or they can be easily replaced with any like another person tomorrow. I think it's really poisonous. Yeah. I had a friend when I was at Microsoft who got canceled over something incredibly stupid, and I wrote a really impassioned plea on his behalf that was basically like, he brought something to this position that is irreplaceable. You are not going to find another person like him, not anywhere. And even if you could find someone who was like him, that person wouldn't have any of the social trust that he's built up with this community for all this time. And, and
that's huge.
And to treat him with the disrespect that you have because you just let him go instead of asking him what happened or discussing the topic or or trying to find a compromise. You just let him go. And that's been and I think young people can see that, and they're sort of like, well, what's the point?
Yeah.
Right. Like, am I coming into this place? Am I coming into the world as someone who has something unique to offer, valuable? Can I build something around myself that has meaning and purpose and value? Or are they going to cog me into the machine and then cog me back out when profit takes a 3% dip?
Right. Yeah.
I think that's I think our sort of a modern management style is absolutely views people as cogs.
Right.
And it's socially bad.
Yeah.
And when it hits a larger culture, it's incredibly demoralizing.
It really is,
So.
especially when that's not the only thing demoralizing people.
Right. No, I think purpose, just helping people find purpose and meaning, and that not just that they can find it for themselves, they can give it to other people.
Yeah,
is a really core problem of our age.
How do you cultivate that?
Oh man. Well, I think you kind of have to start small. Any sort of community you can build where you can feel someone's absence when they're gone is good.
Yeah.
So and you just can't do that with a large enough community. You have to start a small community. I have a community of internet weirdos that I kind of wander around with.
Yeah.
And we're mostly in tech. We're all very weird, but it's there's a bunch of people inside that where people notice when they're not there, because you rely on them to show up and talk about this topic or that topic, and one of the big things that we used to meet in real life a bunch of times. There were a lot of us in Seattle and San Francisco.
Yeah.
I used to live in Seattle, and but making that in-person connection was really good for this group. But also we will help each other out. If somebody is actually hurting financially, they can go to the group and ask for help.
Right. Yeah.
Noticing that people are missing is really important.
It is, yes.
If somebody doesn't show up for the meeting, or if but the thing that I tell a lot of them are really struggling because they don't live in San Francisco or Seattle. They don't get to see people all the time, and most of their community is on the internet. And the thing that I keep telling them is, you need to go to church. Because church is where you are going to that's going to be a starting point for social interaction, and that I have no problem with that answer because I'm a really extroverted person.
Yeah.
So I joined a church when I moved here to Chattanooga about 2 years ago, and now I lead the coffee service there, and I coordinate with other people, and people would definitely notice if I left.
Yes.
Because I jumped into a leadership role. I jumped into a volunteer role. I know it's harder for some other people to do, but anything, what I've found is that a lot of churches are desperately looking for someone to take care of the kids during to do kids church sorts of stuff.
Right.
Anything that's cleanup or tech work or that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
There's an eagerness with most churches to just find anybody, and that's the toehold. And you gotta if I was talking to young people, you gotta get that, you gotta get it so somebody there knows your name.
Yes.
Right? And know their name and say hi every time you go there. because that's the start, and you can sort of snowball that up.
Yeah, and it's small, but there is an amount of responsibility that you, as the person seeking that out, have to take.
Right.
You can't just show up and expect, that to fall into your lap.
Right.
I mean, churches are looking for it, right?
Yep.
And so it's not hard to find, but like you do have to take the step and say, "Hey, I'm so and so. I'd like to do blank."
Yeah. Yeah. It's I think it's a really important small piece. It's something that I feel like we used to do a little bit more naturally, and now you kind of have to go out your way to get it done.
Sure.
And that's always a little bit harder, but it really is going to depend on how willing someone is to take the step.
Mm-hmm.
So there are fewer sort of mentorship and classes and sort of formal ways to go down that path.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got to strike out on your own, which isn't great,
Right,
but,
yeah.
but that's where we live right now.
It's true.
So,
well, that's part of the problem, honestly, that Cube Living tries to solve. It's
Mm-hmm.
just like honestly, if every church was doing what the church should do, then there would be absolutely no need for what we're doing here.
right.
But just the need for that intimate Christian community where your presence matters,
Mm-hmm.
and where everyone is pursuing the same big picture thing.
Right.
And there's safety to be able to make mistakes together,
Mm-hmm.
and to fail with forward trajectory.
Yeah, for sure,
and
yeah.
I think it's so needed.
Yeah.
And what a gift the church has to offer a depressed, nihilistic world,
Yeah.
that is becoming more and more fragmented and separated and individualistic. And
Yeah.
I don't think I think there'll be even more of a need for the church and a desire for the church as that becomes
Right.
more of a reality,
Right. Well, and the church is needs to be ready to capitalize on that and be able to reach people with a message that isn't that there is value and importance, and and that being part of a community does means mutual care, but also mutual responsibility.
Right. Yes.
So,
yes. It's the priesthood of all believers, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I think too, we'll begin to see more of a shift away from churches being this programmatic entity, and more to being actual communities of people being mobilized in their faith.
I sure hope so.
Yeah.
I sure hope so. It's hit and miss as to whether or not a church recognizes what's going on around them.
Sure.
Right. A lot of the time, and so that's churches can end up getting really caught up in the day-to-day and miss some of these big picture stuff is happening in our culture, and
right. Yeah.
We need to be the antidote to a lot of it.
Yes. It'd be nice if we could just do our own thing most of the time. A lot of ways they can, but there are big major cultural shifts happening. I'm not that old. I'm 29, But even
Right.
since I started college in 2012 to now,
Mm-hmm.
I can't even believe some of the
Right.
cultural shifts that
Right.
have happened, and
Yeah.
the idea that I am a man trapped in a woman's body is a sentence that could make sense.
Sure,
And it's insane,
There's a lot of stuff going on, and it's really hard because there's this humongous continuum of people who are earnestly trying to figure out what's going on with the culture, people who are trying to move it forward, people who are capitalizing or even intentionally using those cultural changes to get something that they want, right?
Yeah,
We're in a sort of a golden age of scam and villainy, where you can pretty easily take somebody's empathy and use it against them.
Yeah.
Right. Because there is this sort of cancel culture idea where any sort of misstep can get you get you kicked out of a community or dismissed from your job, and and that kind of like all of this sort of pulls together into that, like you have to treat people with dignity and with honesty, and but you also have to be guarded enough to know who you're dealing with, right? Because there are people who will want to utilize that. There are people who are looking for genuine people in order to mess with them.
Right, exactly. And you have to be able, like you said, to know who you're dealing with, and to be able to be firm enough in your own self and what you believe, and then just be able to.
It's funny, like if there was like a biblical thing that I could tell young people, like study up on Proverbs and Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes will help you deal with the nihilism, and Proverbs will help you Proverbs is all about like, developing wisdom, and its vision of wisdom. The vision of wisdom that comes out of Proverbs isn't just like loving people and understanding things and being smart. It's also about being shrewd.
Yes.
And if you if you can, being able to bring that shrewdness in along with empathy is and it's something very much worth developing.
It is, yeah. So there's a personality assessment called the Big Five personality assessment. I took that 2 years ago, and I was 98th percentile agreeable.
Right.
And like, honestly, like part of my journey personally over the last couple of years and going through counseling has been like assertiveness training, right? It's like, I can't just say yes to everything, you know? And like, I actually have to know what I believe and stand up for it. I think it's Jordan Peterson that says, there's no dignity in not biting someone if you don't have teeth.
Right.
And, we got to be able to have teeth, and because there might be a time when we need to use them, not to tear somebody up, but to defend what's true and honorable and good. And,
No, I think it's funny because I at the same time that I'm trying to like help people develop these individual traits, and be like a lot of your life is under your control, and how you approach life is very dependent on how you're able to bring your own emotions and your own will into check to achieve a goal and that sort of thing. But I'm doing that sort of at the same time that I'm saying, however, we can't do this one man is an island thing anymore.
Yes.
If we have tried that, it has not worked out, and we need to be developing real community.
Yes.
I think one of the really difficult things is that real community takes time.
Yes.
And it takes some vulnerability. And like it is through these moments that are sort of built up over years that you develop real friendships, and you develop real genuine relationships. You can learn to trust people.
Yeah.
And we need so much more of that.
Yeah.
It's something that is people are less willing to be vulnerable because it seems like there's so many sharks in the water. And that keeps them from developing relationships and communities that would strengthen them against it.
Exactly. Yes.
So there
is risk involved in that, but it wouldn't be vulnerability if there wasn't risk involved. It's just kind of par for the course there. But,
right.
Oh. So if you were talking to, let's say one of my students, you just moved in, they're 18, come up to you and they're talking, they're like, how do I make friends as an adult? How do I, trust people?
Well, those are two different questions.
Yeah. Take them one at a time.
I mean, friends as an adult is, for me, the biggest one is go to church. That's something that I've found as a way of building relationships is really, really important. I will if you have friends, let's say you're coming out of college, you maintain those friendships with your college friends, because that stuff will mature enormously, and they will
Yes.
have other friends from other contexts who will end up being good friends
Yes.
for you if you meet. And but just like don't ghost people that you already know. And if you can maintain those relationships, it's really important. I think I've got about a half dozen friends that I'll do reasonably frequent Zoom meetings, so we just live in different places.
Yeah.
Just to catch up and see what's going on. If you're getting to know someone, ask them about their family. I think like there's some weird trigger that hits people's hearts when you remember that their mom's going through a hard time,
yes.
or their brother is having this difficulty, and because that's it's people are so nervous to share those stories, because that's sort of letting someone into this very close interior part of them. And so if someone does share those stories, do try to remember them.
Yes, yes.
And then following up and asking about friends, family, is a really great way to start building those relationships.
Yeah. Something that I think it was Bob Goff. I think I heard him talking about this, that I've started doing is like when somebody does share like an important thing like that, like, hey, my grandma died, on this day or whatever, then I'll mark in my calendar like, hey, this is the anniversary of this thing for this person, and not even necessarily be like, hey, I know today's the day your grandma died, but it could, I may not even mention grandma, but on that day just be like, hey, I was thinking about you today, you're awesome, that kind of thing, and just kind of like systematizing the empathy and the connection and like that kind of thing.
It's fun, like finding the things that are important to people and holding on to them, and sharing them. Resharing them is so important for building relationships, and it's I mean, part of the reason I'm here is because I like you. We met. I like you. And I'm like, I would like to follow. Let's keep having that conversation. Keep moving it forward.
So this is fun.
Right. Right. No, it's great, and it's fun to meet new people. And one of the things I really my weirdo internet friend group in Seattle is we would all get together, and we're all thinking about sort of the same things.
Yeah.
But everybody's got a different angle on it. Right, because of either their lived experience, or maybe they've gone down a different rabbit hole than you've gone down, and so to kind of bring those ideas and get them to meet each other with people I think it's extremely fun. Yeah,
it is,
but
and
also,
we're better together, because of that.
Yeah, and it builds people up, and it builds community, and that's just it's so great. So,
yeah, man. So you do a lot of writing. Tell me about.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned you kind of got into the blog space during COVID and doing data and stuff like that. How's that evolved? What do you think is like the purpose for your writing? Is it just a creative endeavor? Is it something more?
So it started with COVID stuff, and it was just trying to help people understand what's going on with this horrible thing, and to be able to meet it in the way it was happening, and it's turned into I'll do some writing on politics and culture. I do a lot of data dives, either into scientific articles or just publicly available data, and start asking questions about things there are a couple of really interesting questions around like what's happening with schools and education, where there's been a great migration out of certain states into other states from within cities, that sort of thing. That's all really interesting and curious. It's fun to speculate about. I also do a lot of interviews with people who have very specific expertise.
Okay.
And that has always, I really love doing that. I talked to someone with 20 years of experience as a not a poll watcher, but a poll worker. right? And so she will talk. She had a lot of great things to say, like, okay, when you go to vote, this is what you need to have this stuff ready. You need to talk to these people, and this is how it works, and this is why you can rely on the integrity of the vote in such circumstances. I talked to someone who's been doing like 15 years of advocacy for reading education for young kids. And that's a great conversation to have, because she just, there's sort of two ways to get to know something. One is to go research it on your own, and the other is to ask somebody who already knows it.
Yes.
And the researching on your own is important, because that's usually how you're going to get started, and you're going to learn a lot of things. But I find that it can be incredibly overwhelming, because
oh my gosh, it's like you don't even know what questions to ask.
Exactly. Terminology. You don't know what terms to Google to find the questions.
Yes.
Right. And so I do a lot with that. I did. I'm very, very concerned with things like human dignity. And I get really, like, one of the things that really bothered me with COVID is like medical institutions, hospitals that got so myopic about stopping the spread of this disease that they were essentially denying the dignity of the people they were caring for, right? And so, like, putting people in rooms and not letting them have visitors was I thought, a really violent denial of someone's the importance of someone's social connections.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, a relative of mine almost died in the hospital. And like, he wasn't even sure if his wife was going to be able to be in there with him.
Right.
You know, like,
right. No,
that's stupid.
I think during COVID, the isolation policies were very, very bad. They were all focused on transmission and not at all about the people who were getting sick. I think that's a part of what people want so much, and they feel is missing, is that they want to know that there's somebody out there who, even if they fall down, even if they make a mistake, that person is never going to let them go.
Yeah, because we're not going to do everything perfect. It's like, one of the things that I want to know with the people that I'm close with is, like, do I have permission to be clumsy in this, right?
I think that's great. Yeah, no, that's a great way of putting it. And that's high risk. Because you can run the risk of being associated with someone like that. There's a journalist that I knew who got fired from her position because she refused to condemn somebody that she had known for years who was a bad person, but she wasn't going to break. She's like, I'm not breaking ties with this person. I'm not going to condemn him from a public stage. I'm not going to do it. And she paid a pretty steep price for that. But I mean, I don't know how much it matters to her, but I've got an enormous amount of respect for her.
Right.
I have found that the respect that you gain from holding true to that is long lasting, and it's something that people are really seeking, really trying to find and trying to hold on to, and they feel it's missing, and that's I think absolutely, if you're looking for like a high dividend behavior that you want to adopt that goes a long way towards building friendships, if you can become known as someone who's loyal to his friends, that's a big one.
Oh my gosh, yeah, for sure. Because, I mean, it's so easy to just ghost somebody, you know. It's getting easier and easier and easier and more common, you know. And so that skill just becomes more and more valuable, or that character trait becomes more and more valuable, you know.
Yeah. And it's tough because it's not something that will always be reciprocated. But you know, the more you do it, the more people know about it. And there's a lot of stuff that goes on in hushed tones where people, you know, will get together, and the best thing that you could possibly have is for two people to talk about you behind your back, and one of them leans in and is like, he was a good guy, right? Like, you can trust him. That's invaluable.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
Yeah, and that's something that's invaluable kind of across the spectrum, just in your personal life, in your social life, in your professional life. Word gets around. It really does.
It does.
So
it does, and so much about like everything, really. I mean, this is just so broad, but everything is about relationship.
Right.
You know, getting the job that you want, succeeding in your career, you know, building up your friend group, your faith, whatever. It's like a lot of it just comes down to like, do you know people? Are you good to them?
Right.
You know, are you loyal? Are you honest? Are you know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it builds up. It could take a while. It's hard. I think one of the hard things is for young people to see is they haven't built up enough of it yet.
Yeah.
And so even if you see yourself as a very, very loyal person, it's not everybody might see that quite yet. There's going to be there's going to be some moments that are going to have to come by in order for that trait to come out. And that you may know that's who you are, but it does take time for that to develop as a social reality, right?
Yeah, but one of the valuable things about loyalty in general to people that you care about especially is that like we are all going to experience crisis at some point.
Yep.
And that's the kind of person that can be relied upon.
Yeah.
You know, in a crisis. It's one thing to be loyal when like you get along all the time, you know, and everything's good, but whether the crisis is between the two of you in some sort of conflict or it's an external thing, it's like if you know that person can be counted on, that's huge.
Yeah. Oh, here's a fun one for people who don't mind doing this. If like a good friendship / relationship hack is if somebody's moving, jump on board and go help them move stuff. Yeah. Because when you move, it's sort of a time of mini crisis, no matter who you are, right?
Exactly.
Like
Moving
you're always going from one thing to a new thing, from an old thing to a new thing, and that transition has a way of like stimulating memory response. In your brain. The other thing is that a bunch of their friends will be there, so you'll get to meet new people.
Right. Yeah. Hey.
There's something intimate about moving someone's personal possessions, right? And you're getting to know them as you move their sock drawer or whatever. And that's also a big deal. Now, the trick of that is that they may be moving out of town. So you may be helping them at a time when you're never going to see them again.
Right.
But the other people who are helping move are not. They're still going to be there.
Yes.
I have made a lot of friends by helping people move. And it's always well appreciated. It always sticks in their minds. So like if you're young and you've got some free time, try to like carve out a little bit of space in case somebody needs to move, and jump on that opportunity.
Get a little pickup truck,
right? So if you get the young person with a pickup truck gets asked to every move.
Yes, exactly. That's my friend Joe.
Yep. So
man, let me ask you a little more of a fun question. What's your favorite thing that you've written?
Oh man. Okay, so
it's probably an unfair question, but
probably. So my favorite, it was probably my first COVID piece.
Okay.
So I was living in Seattle at the time, and the very first outbreak of COVID, the first identified outbreak of COVID, was about 2 miles from my house.
Oh wow!
It was in an old folks' home, and it was right down the street from me, and things got weird really fast in our neighborhood. But it was a really interesting piece that I wrote because I was watching as our institutions were basically useless, right? Like our local governments didn't know what to do. Our school officials were kind of like, I don't know what's going on.
Right.
The CDC was sending out bad tests. The FDA was trying to stop local researchers from testing for COVID because they said that the tests they were using weren't approved, even though like clearly nothing was going to be approved for months. So we need to know something.
Right.
It was like so all of the institutional level of everything just was useless.
Yeah.
And at the same time, the individual level of people in a crisis was incredible. People were like, there were some elderly people on Facebook groups, or that you'd reach out who needed food, and so someone would go out, get food, and deliver it to them.
Yeah,
and people needed money, and money came to them because the community, like the individuals, instantly recognized that people need help and jumped in to help.
Right.
Even
yeah,
as the institutions
yeah.
were useless to help them. And I loved writing about that because it was
Yes.
so beautiful to see. Like, it's so frustrating that we have all of this scaffolding of things that are supposed to work that didn't work.
Right. Yes.
But then when you got down to the community, people were eager to help each other. They were like, there were more people out there ready to help than there was help needed.
That's so good. Yeah.
And that was really beautiful to me. And I thought that was, and one of the things that really frustrated me during that whole, and so that's the best piece. I'll send you a link.
Yeah, please.
But one of the worst parts of that crisis was when institutions tried to get in the way of that.
Yeah, yeah.
And I talked about, like, we talked about hospitals, leaving something that I would love to see like made. I hate making things laws, because laws are always terrible and they always have unintended consequences.
Sure.
But something that I'd love to see made law, or see become more socially acceptable, is that there is a priest in the 1800s who went to live at a leper colony in Hawaii, or on one of the Hawaiian islands, and he caught leprosy, as you do when you go minister to a leper colony. But there is a really long-standing tradition, religious tradition, of going to care for the people, going to care for the infectious.
Yeah.
Right? Knowing that it's a risk for you, but knowing that they need care.
Yeah.
Right? They need socialization. They need someone who can help them. They need someone to bring the word of God to them. And like getting in the way of that, I think is bad.
Yes,
It's just like
I agree.
flat out evil. And it would be I would love to see a little bit more of a social and political recognition that care for the sick is vital.
Yeah.
So,
Man, that's good.
yeah.
Well, one more kind of fun question. Like, thinking about like all different compartments of your life, your family, work, writing, hobbies, whatever. What are you most excited about in the next year?
Oh man, I probably my family is doing. We're just starting to homeschool my youngest. We've been doing that for a couple of weeks.
How many children do you have?
I've got 3 kids. They are 12, 10, and 8. And my 12-year-old is getting into. She's starting to do things like cheer and piano and like a lot more stuff that's sort of outside the house and stuff that I can't help her with, which is daunting and exciting. And then my youngest he loves doing math, so he will come downstairs and like open up his math and like do all of his math before anybody else wakes up. So I'm excited to see how that works, because there's a lot of family dynamics that go into homeschooling. We kind of got pushed into it.
Yeah.
My kids were going to public school in Seattle until they shut it down.
Okay.
And they did remote school for a year out there, and it was a disaster.
Yes.
And so then when we moved to Chattanooga, mostly by necessity, we just kind of like, I don't want to deal with finding a house and trying to study various schools to see which one. We're just going to homeschool.
Yeah.
And that ended up working out really, really well for my girls, my 2 oldest. And then my son did public school here for a couple of years, and we decided to pull him into the homeschooling. So there's a lot of family patterns that that we're still kind of ironing it out.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
But I'm curious to see what'll happen in the next year. And then while we do that, my job is really thrilling.
Yeah.
It's extremely exciting work. I love all my teammates, and just being able to build new stuff, Every time we have a new client, they have a new problem, and I love solving their problems.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's just like it's really, I mean, to kind of try to tie it back in, it's really soul enriching because I did feel like a cog when I was at Disney, with,
Right.
on a team of several hundred people building these things.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like if I left that very much bad would happen. And now if I leave, like everything that I've worked on grinds to a halt. Nobody's gonna be able to use it, right? And so everything I do is with a group of people where nobody else can do it.
Okay.
They need me to solve that problem and make something.
Right.
And that's just a really great way to live. So
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, Matthias, thanks. This has been fun.
thanks for having me out.
I love anytime we've gotten together to chat. It's just intriguing.
I'm glad to be here, and thanks for introducing me to the organization here.
Yeah,
Pretty
yeah.
cool.
And hey, if you guys are interested in hearing more about what Matthias does, I'll post some links in the podcast notes and that kind of thing, your Subsplash and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, sure.
Cool.
Great, thank you.
So long, everyone.